Prepare to unlearn the biggest lies Americans believe about their own country. Prepare to unlearn. Because today we're not talking about what the United States claims to be. We're talking about what Americans believe it is. And more importantly, the lies they repeat so often that they stopped sounding like lies and started sounding like facts. This is not an attack. This is not hate. This is not anti-American. This is something far more dangerous. Reality, without filters, without slogans, without patriotic background music. The United States is extremely good at telling stories. Hollywood, politics, advertising, motivational speeches. No country on earth sells a narrative better. The problem starts when the narrative replaces reality. And the most loyal consumers of this fantasy are not foreigners. They are Americans themselves. So today, we're going to dismantle, calmly, methodically, and unapologetically, the biggest lies Americans believe about their own country. Some are comforting, some are convenient, and some are absolutely necessary for the system to keep functioning. Take a deep breath, because the first lie starts early, very early. Lie number 1. The United States is the greatest democracy in the world. This one is sacred. From childhood, Americans are taught that they live in the most democratic, most free, most representative nation on earth. It's repeated in schools, in speeches, in movies, in foreign policy. But here's the question that rarely gets asked. Democracy for whom and under what conditions? Let's start with basic facts. In the United States, voting is not mandatory. Elections are not direct. A candidate can lose the popular vote and still become president. That's not an opinion, that's structural design. The Electoral College was created to protect the system, not the voter. In practice, millions of votes matter less or not at all, depending on where you live. And that's just the beginning. Electoral districts are constantly redrawn to favor political parties, a process so normalized it even has a friendly name: gerrymandering. The result? Elections that are legal but deeply distorted. Now add private campaign financing. Corporations, lobbyists, super PACs and billionaires have more influence over elections than the average citizen will ever have. Calling this the greatest democracy in the world requires a very flexible definition of democracy. Is it a functioning democracy? Yes. Is it the most democratic system possible? Not even close, but the myth must exist, because questioning it leads to a much more dangerous question. If this is democracy, who is it really designed for? Lie number 2. Anyone can make it if they work hard enough. This is the emotional backbone of the American identity. The American dream. The idea that hard work, determination and merit are all you need to succeed. It sounds inspiring, it feels empowering, and it works perfectly as propaganda. Because if success is purely individual, then failure must be individual too. The system disappears, the blame remains. Here's the uncomfortable reality. Social mobility in the United States has been declining for decades. If you're born poor, there's a high chance you'll stay poor. Education is expensive. Healthcare is expensive. Housing is expensive. Working hard is no longer a competitive advantage. It's the minimum requirement for survival. Millions of Americans work 2 or 3 jobs and still live paycheck to paycheck. But the dream must survive. Because it doesn't exist to describe reality. It exists to justify inequality. If you didn't make it, you simply didn't try hard enough. The system is never at fault. Lie number 3. America values freedom above everything else. Freedom is the most used word in the United States, but rarely do people ask, freedom for whom? Freedom to do what? Economic freedom for corporations? Absolutely. Financial freedom for banks? No question. But freedom for the average citizen. Crippling student debt, a healthcare system that can bankrupt you, mass surveillance, private prisons profiting from incarceration. This is a highly conditional freedom. You are free as long as you can afford it. If you can't, the system quickly reminds you where you stand. Freedom became a slogan, not a lived experience. Lie number 4. The media is free and unbiased. This one hurts because many Americans truly believe it. But American media is corporate, highly concentrated, dependent on advertisers, closely tied to financial interests. It doesn't need to lie outright. It frames. It decides what becomes breaking news and what quietly disappears. Wars are framed as necessary. Systemic problems become isolated incidents. Structural failures turn into cultural debates. The appearance of pluralism is maintained, while the core of the system remains protected. Lie number 5. The United States is the most respected country in the world. Inside the US, this belief is strong. Outside the US, not so much. America is feared. America is influential. America is powerful, but respected. In many parts of the world, the US is associated with military interventions, economic sanctions, political destabilization, supporting dictators when convenient. This rarely appears in American classrooms. The history taught is always the liberators' version, never the interveners, which explains the cultural shock many Americans experience abroad. The world does not see America the way America sees itself. Lie number 6. The system works. It just needs minor fixes. This is the final lie, and the most dangerous one, because it keeps everything exactly as it is. The belief that the system is fundamentally good, just poorly managed. That all we need are better politicians, small reforms, a few adjustments. But when problems persist for decades, they are not flaws. They are features. Rising inequality, recurring crises, permanent debt. That's not a bug, that's design. And here's the truth. Americans are rarely told. The country is not what it says about itself. It is what it does, repeatedly. And as long as people believe these comforting myths, nothing truly changes. But the moment people start to unlearn, the system gets nervous. If you're still here, congratulations. That already puts you in a minority, because questioning national myths is uncomfortable. And in the United States, discomfort is often treated as betrayal, which leads us directly to the next lie. Lie number 7. Criticizing the country means you hate it. This belief is deeply ingrained. From an early age, Americans are taught that criticism equals disloyalty, that pointing out flaws means you're ungrateful, that asking hard questions somehow makes you anti-American. But here's the paradox. If a country is truly strong, it should withstand criticism. If an idea is truly solid, it shouldn't collapse under questions. Yet in the US, criticism is often framed as a moral failure, not an intellectual one. Why? Because patriotism has been carefully redefined. Patriotism is no longer about improving the country. It's about defending its image. Flags, slogans, anthems, rituals, symbols replace substance. And once patriotism becomes emotional instead of rational, it becomes a powerful tool of control. People stop asking, "Is this working?" and start asking, "Whose side are you on?" This shuts down debate instantly. You're no longer arguing ideas, you're defending identities, and identities don't negotiate. Lead number 8, America is uniquely self-correcting. This one sounds sophisticated. The idea that the system may stumble, but it always fixes itself. That institutions are strong enough to correct injustice over time. Sometimes that's true, but here's what's conveniently left out. Most corrections did not come voluntarily. They came from pressure, from conflict, from protest, from social disruption. Civil rights were not granted because the system suddenly became moral. They were demanded. Labor protections were not gifts, they were fought for. Women's rights were not inevitable. They were resisted at every step. The system didn't self-correct. It was forced to change. But the myth of automatic progress is comforting. It allows people to wait instead of act. If it's wrong, the system will fix it eventually. That belief is not optimism. It's passivity disguised as wisdom. Lie Thunder 9. The US is a meritocracy. This one is emotionally addictive because it tells people they earned their position, and if they're struggling, it tells them why. Meritocracy sounds fair, clean, moral, but real meritocracy requires equal starting points. The US does not have that. Where you're born, how much wealth your family has, your race, your zip code, your access to education and healthcare all dramatically shape outcomes. Success is not just about talent or effort. It's about leverage, and the system distributes leverage very unevenly. Still, the myth persists, because meritocracy does something very useful. It justifies inequality. If the rich deserve their wealth, then the poor deserve their situation too. Structural problems become personal failures, and the system avoids responsibility. Lie Nasiraka 10. Foreign criticism comes from jealousy. This one is almost comical. When people abroad criticize US policies, culture, or influence, the reflexive response is, they hate us because they're jealous. D. This is a convenient way to dismiss criticism without engaging with it. But most international criticism has nothing to do with envy. It comes from lived experience, from military interventions, from economic pressure, from cultural dominance, from double standards. Outside the US, America is not viewed as a heroic protagonist. It's viewed as a superpower that acts in its own interest. Sometimes that interest aligns with others. Often, it doesn't. The shock many Americans feel when they travel abroad comes from realizing something unsettling. The world does not see America the way America sees itself. Lie, Dash 11. Politics is broken because of the wrong people. This belief keeps the cycle going. If only we had better leaders, smarter politicians, more honest presidents. But focusing on individuals hides something uncomfortable. The system consistently produces the same types of outcomes regardless of who's in charge. Different personalities, similar constraints, different rhetoric, same economic realities. This suggests the problem isn't just who governs, it's how power is structured. But that question is harder, more abstract, less emotionally satisfying. So the narrative stays simple. Vote harder next time. Lie de Sugar 12. Everything bad is temporary. This is the lie that ties all the others together. The belief that current problems are just phases, that things are bad now, but they'll return to normal. But what if this is the normal? Rising inequality, permanent debt, precarious work, mental health crises, political polarization. These are not temporary glitches. They are long-term consequences of structural choices. Calling them temporary delays, real solutions. And here's the uncomfortable truth most Americans are never taught. Loving a country does not mean believing its myths. It means being willing to outgrow them. Nations don't collapse because people criticize them. They collapse because people stop thinking. And the most dangerous lies are not the ones imposed from outside. They are the ones people repeat to themselves because they feel good. If you've made it this far, congratulations. You're already doing something many Americans are taught not to do. You're questioning the story. And that brings us to one of the most uncomfortable truths of all. In the United States, questioning the national narrative is often treated as betrayal, not disagreement. Not debate, betrayal, criticize the healthcare system, and you hate America. Question foreign policy, and you're unpatriotic. Point out systemic inequality, and you're divisive. This reaction is not accidental. It's learned behavior. From a very young age, Americans are taught a specific form of patriotism, one that confuses loyalty with silence. You're encouraged to celebrate the flag, the anthem, the military, the founders, but discouraged from asking deeper questions about outcomes, consequences, and power. Patriotism becomes emotional, not analytical, and emotional patriotism is extremely useful because it creates a psychological shield around the system. If criticism feels like an attack on identity, the system never has to defend itself. That's how myths survive. Now let's talk about something even more uncomfortable. The United States doesn't just believe its own myths, it exports them. Hollywood, news media, pop culture, social platforms all function as soft power. The American story is packaged as universal truth, freedom, opportunity, individualism, success, and the world consumes it. But inside the country, many Americans are shocked to discover how differently they are perceived abroad. They expect admiration. They often encounter skepticism, because outside the narrative bubble, the contradictions are obvious. A country that preaches freedom, but imprisons more people than any other nation. A country that celebrates equality, but tolerates extreme inequality. A country that promotes democracy, but supports authoritarian regimes when convenient. These contradictions are rarely taught at home, not because they're hidden, but because they don't fit the story. And here's the key point: most Americans never learn. A country doesn't become exceptional by declaring itself exceptional. It becomes exceptional by confronting its flaws honestly. Which brings us to another deeply embedded lie. The idea that the system works, it just needs better people. This belief keeps hope alive and change safely limited. Because if the system is fundamentally good, then structural criticism becomes unnecessary. Just replace leaders, vote harder, wait 4 more years. But when the same problems persist across decades, parties and administrations, the issue is no longer personnel. It's architecture. Healthcare bankrupts people regardless of who's in office. Student debt grows regardless of who's in office. Military spending expands regardless of who's in office. Corporate influence survives regardless of who's in office. That's not coincidence, that's continuity. And yet many Americans are taught to see each crisis as temporary, isolated or exceptional, never systemic. Because once you recognize a pattern, you can no longer unsee it. Now here's the part that truly unsettles the system. The biggest lie Americans believe is not about freedom, democracy, or opportunity. It's this: that the country is honest with itself. It's not. The United States is incredibly honest about its successes and remarkably quiet about its failures. History is sanitized. Violence is justified. Inequality is individualized. Failures are reframed as accidents. Victims are blamed for not trying hard enough. And all of it is wrapped in optimism. Because optimism, when weaponized, becomes denial. Things will work out. The market will fix it. America always finds a way. Sometimes it does, but sometimes optimism is just a way to avoid responsibility. Now let's be clear. This is not about hating the United States. It's about taking it seriously, because the most dangerous form of loyalty is loyalty without honesty. Real strength comes from self-criticism. Real confidence comes from confronting reality. And here's the irony. The very values Americans claim to cherish, freedom, courage, independence, are the same values required to question the national myth. But those values are rarely applied inward. Instead, the myth becomes sacred, and sacred stories are not examined. They are defended until they crack, and cracks are appearing. Economic pressure, political polarization, loss of institutional trust, generational frustration. More Americans are starting to feel that something doesn't add up. They followed the rules. They worked hard, they played the game, and the promised outcome never arrived. That moment, when belief collides with experience, is where unlearning begins. And unlearning is dangerous, not because it destroys a country, but because it destroys illusions. If this video made you uncomfortable, good. Discomfort is the beginning of clarity. If it made you angry, ask why. Anger often protects beliefs that are starting to fail. And if it made you rethink what you were taught about your own country, then this channel is doing exactly what it exists to do. Share this video with someone who still believes the myth without question. not to argue, not to insult, but to open a crack. And subscribe. Because here we don't attack countries, we attack comforting lies. We don't tell you what to think. We show you what you were never encouraged to question. Prepare to unlearn.